Hi, guys. Welcome back to another fabulous episode of the Balanced Boss Mom podcast. I'm your host, Erika, as normal, that you see here on YouTube and on Spotify, wherever you listen to. Today's topic is going to be such a great topic that we're going to have. We're going to go a little bit off topic here, but that's okay because that's what the Balanced Boss Mom is all about. We go off topics. So, in today's episode is one that so many of us need to hear, and it's especially for women, in general, for moms, and not even that, even entrepreneurs need to hear this about this episode today. We are going to dive into health self-advocacy and why it matters as a boss mom, and how to understand more of our bodies, our hormones, and even the health choices that we need to make that completely transform in a way that we need to speak often about our hormones in our bodies. So, without further ado, I am welcoming my wonderful friend Kori on the podcast.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for coming on to the Balance Boss Mom podcast. I'm a little nervous because, we're talking about our bodies and we're talking about hormones, but hey, it's something that I'm ready to dive into.
It's all good. I think the moment that we step into curiosity, that starts to dissipate those nerves, especially, when we're out here talking about hormones, how they affect our business and speaking up for ourselves in our health. I mean, these are all such important topics and I love that, thank you so much for inviting me here. I'm excited to dive into some of these really important and not often talked about topics and just shed some light on our bodies and periods. Hey, let's go.
I think it's going to be one of the best topics that we've ever had on the podcast. I mean, like I said, I've had doctors, I've had TED Talk speakers, I've had multiple women come on. And often in previous episodes, I have talked about racial bias and, what we stand for. So I know we're going to get into a little bit of that in our episode for this morning. But like I said, I'm so excited for you to be here and so excited for you to share your story. Before we dive into, I have an icebreaker that I want to just ask off topic. So, what is one word that you would use to describe how you feel about your own health or about your own body issues or hormones?
Mm, vibrant.
Yes.
Which is so different than where I used to.
Mhm.
It wasn't very long ago that I was really struggling with my weight. I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome when I was in my 20s and had struggled with that for all through my 30s. And now that I'm in my 40s, I've kind of found the keys to helping my own body thrive. And now I have more energy, more clarity, more focus, and just a more compassion for myself than I
Mhm.
ever have before. So vibrant it's a word I use frequently, but it's really truly what I feel um in my own health right now and just vibrant and
I
sure.
think that is the most powerful word that you can use. I think vibrant needs to be used forward into 2026 a little bit because 2025 is not shifting where it needs to be. Now, that is the icebreaker that I have to start off with this episode. Let's start with the heart of this conversation. And I know me and you, we've had a powerful conversation off camera talking about it, which made me want to talk about it on camera about health, self-advocacy. And I
Mhm.
know so many women and so many moms, especially, I know for myself, I've done a lot of self-advocacy for myself. And I think it's very important to self-advocate for yourself because as a minority, we're the last on the title pole, like I often
Mhm.
say. And I feel like since we are the last on the title pole, we need to be measured the same way that everybody else is being measured too. So I want to get into that conversation a little bit where we're taking care of, we take care of everybody and
Yeah.
we don't take care of ourselves as often as we should. And it's often dismissed or misheard. Like I stated in my previous episodes, when I was pregnant with my daughter, I didn't know you can change your doctors.
Mm.
I didn't
Yeah.
know you can change out your nurses. If a nurse was being rude to you, you could change out your nurse. Um, there was just a lot of trauma that happened
Yeah.
with my pregnancy where I would say, "Hey, I'm walking with a cane here." I have scoliosis in my back, so I was like, "I'm walking with a
Mhm.
cane." this is not safe. Like in my head, I'm like, this is not safe because I'm walking with a cane and I'm carrying a baby. So, and I kind of pushed for that, but now I'm even learning that you can have a self doula come in and check for your hormones and check for your um regular imbalances of your
Mhm.
hormones. And I was like, that's very interesting. I never knew that. So how would you define health self advocacy, and why is it so important for women and especially moms or leaders to follow up with the self advocacy for
Mhm.
themselves?
This is such an important conversation, and understanding what does it mean to be one's self advocate in your healthcare. Um, just kind of broadly speaking, health self advocacy is the practice of understanding and asserting your own health needs, your rights, and your preferences, what it is that you want, to make sure
Hmm.
that you're getting the appropriate care that you need. In layman's terms, I like to say it's you becoming the VIP on your own healthcare team.
Okay,
Right, like you become the
that's an analogy.
person who is looking at it more like a team rather than this power dynamic. And I know that this is something that is very challenging when we talk about systemic things, especially in healthcare. But there is this pervasive understanding that's like kind of in our culture that the white coats, right, meaning doctors, are the ones
Mhm.
that are in the position of authority.
Mhm.
And that means that if the power dynamics, if they're above us, then we're the ones who are, we have to listen to what they say. We cannot question what they say. And really, we start to feel powerless in our own healthcare. We end up leaving. I mean, how many times have you gone to the doctor and left and felt unseen, unheard? Like, oh, I had a million questions and I didn't even get a chance to ask them.
Yep.
Or I asked a question, but I didn't like the answer. I know we shared a lot about, you know, personally as well, professionally as a registered nurse, how many times I saw the advocacy issues there, but also from a personal side, especially when I was pregnant with my daughter and not being able, we found out 3 weeks before she was due that she was breech, and I had very
Oh,
much
wow.
not intended on having a medicalized childbirth. I'd grown up, my mom had babies at home, and so I
Mhm.
was very, very connected to physiological childbirth. And I had planned on having a natural childbirth myself and had studied and planned, had gone through the Bradley method. Like I learned, I was prepared. I was prepared and had a doctor that was supportive. And then we found out she was breech. And at that time, everything was stripped away. And I felt those power dynamics more than ever. And even spaces where, um, words were used to almost seemingly manipulate me to submit to
That's
their
hap
will. Yeah,
that's happened to me
yeah.
because when I had the last miscarriage that I had
Mm.
a couple years back, and I talked about this before, where the doctor was kind of peer pressuring me into taking and I know we're going to get into birth control later on, but into birth control. And I said, hey, I don't feel comfortable taking this birth control. Um, because I've had so many family members had the IUD,
Yeah.
and I was like, "I don't feel comfortable with this." And he's like, "Well, the best option for you to do is do this." And I said, "Well, I don't feel comfortable." And so then you have the nurse practitioner comes in and she was like, "Well, if you keep getting pregnant, you're gonna die." And
That. Oh my
that
god,
for
I don't
me.
mean to, but that word right there, because that was exactly what I was told. I remember sitting there with this doctor that I very much loved, very much like we had connected. It was a whole story. It was a whole thing,
Mhm.
a whole kind of Cinderella story of how we ended up meeting. It was fantastic. But in that moment, like we had had a failed to try to turn her
Mhm.
manually, and there was a failure, and the doctor that was there was like, well, we could just do the cesarean today. And I was like, no, what? She's like not due for another
Yeah,
two and
she's
a half
not
weeks
good.
I knew enough at that point, even though I wasn't a nurse yet, but I knew enough that my baby needed to wait. Like my body wasn't ready yet and
Mhm.
she wasn't either, and I trusted that. I went and I was like, I want to speak to my doctor first, a OBGYN. And so I spoke to him and I'm talking to him about my concerns and I'm exploring, I'm advocating for myself, right? I'm
Mhm.
asking the questions. What happens if we wait? What happens if we just let her come? And he's telling me, he's like, well, we aren't, trained in delivering vaginal breech births. So there's a risk there. Concerned about your blood pressure, which is actually, it was not, it was a whole thing. Anyway, but the words that came out of his mouth after I kept pushing, right? And I kept asking and I still
Mhm.
wasn't sure was, your baby could die. Conversation was dropped. I went,
Conversation is over.
yeah, it was
Right.
over. There was no more conversation. I have goosebumps thinking about that. And the fact that you also were experiencing that. And I know we're not the only ones that
Mhm.
this particular phrase is used, especially in women's health care,
And
maternity care, OBGYN, right?
walked out of there crying
Oh,
because
so did I.
I was like, "What just happened?" Like, I signed the form and I walked out of there crying and I was like, "I'm never going back." And so they kept calling like, "Hey, we're scheduling. We got it. The medication came in. Are you ready?" And
Mhm.
I was like, "No, not today." I kept pushing them
Yeah.
back. Finally, I just stopped answering. And I
Yeah.
was like, I'm not doing this. This is something that is not healthy for me when I'm asking, "Hey, I wanna take the pill and I wanna continue to take the pill. You can give me a different medication for the pill."
Yeah.
Hello. You can give me a different medication, but you wanna push for an IUD, and I was like, That's requiring surgery. Not happening."
Yeah.
And then on top of that, for me to go into the doctor's office and we were supposed to do an ultrasound to begin with, and you
Mhm.
didn't do the ultrasound because I was like blind. So I was like, wait, we're not doing an ultrasound to see
Yeah.
if I need a DNC? And he was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, because you've expelled everything out." I said, well, just because everything came out doesn't mean I may have issues later down on the line. So at least can you check? No, we're not
How do
going to
you
do.
know unless you look?
Mhm,
I mean,
unless you look and say, "Yeah, she needs a DNC." And so, of course, my mom was like, "You need to keep pushing." And I was like, I said, I've walked out of there. Like, I can't
yeah.
because it's awful to just turn around and just be like, you have to do this. And you don't have to do anything. That's the point of self-advocating for yourself.
Right. That's where I come into this shift of power dynamics and why it's so important for populations who historically experience medical biases and implicit bias, right? That means that
Mhm,
the unconscious biases that providers have that they aren't even aware of, and then also the systemic challenges that are not only in our entire system but in the medical system specifically for vulnerable populations, women,
mhm,
people of color, people who are
mhm,
obese,
mhm.
people who are, in the LGBTQ community, and even people with mental or physical disabilities. Like, even though they're needing the most care, but there's also biases there for them as well. And so if you're a combination of these things, like, there are challenges here. And this is why advocacy is so important because it
Mhm,
gives you the power back. It's you
mhm.
reclaiming your power. It's you saying, okay, look, this is what I'm up against, right? We're not ignoring it. We're not saying it, but we're saying, hey, I can take back some of my power here. I can't get I'm not going to fix everything in the system,
Yeah.
right? We
You
can't.
can't
But
fix it, but at least getting that second opinion will
as
help. It will ease your anxiety for one.
yeah,
Because, like, when you go to your physician or you go to your OBGYN, of course, you want to have the natural answer that is expected. And you're not
yeah,
gonna get the answer all the time, but at least you self-advocate for yourself and to get that, second opinion for yourself,
yeah,
which is the frustrating thing because it's like I want to be able to find an OBGYN where I had one at one point before when I first came to Houston, and she was
yeah,
amazing. But she was like, "Hey, I'm leaving. I'm going." I think she was going like West Texas, and she's like, "If you move to West Texas, I'll gladly, take
mhm,
you." I was like, "I know, but I'm not moving to West Texas
yep,
just with you." But it's very hard to try to find um that OBGYN that fits for women
mhm.
of color.
Yeah,
You know.
absolutely. And that, even just knowing you're right, you had spoken to that earlier about knowing you're right to get a second opinion and to change doctors. Like, doctors work for us. Like,
Mhm.
they are not. in terms of power here, I think again, this is a thing that we like have in our minds that because the doctors have gone to medical school and they're sitting there and they know, right? They know so much. And I am not hating on doctors. I love doctors, right? I'm
I do
not,
too.
but also, like, and also there are issues here that
Mhm,
those power dynamics and they're played into, especially with women, because we're taught to stay quiet. We are
mhm.
taught to uh, not rock the boat, right?
Yep,
These are the things that we're taught as even as little girls as we grow up, that don't speak up against authority, don't rock the boat. You are here to please people, right? Like, be pleasant, be polite, be nice.
yep,
These are the things that we have been programmed into us in the society, the current patriarchal society that we live in.
mhm.
And when we sit down in a doctor's office, we already in our minds see them as in a position of authority. So we automatically play those roles. And this is where advocacy can shift those dynamics and why it's so important. So I
Yeah,
definitely would love to talk more about, yeah, about like how we can advocate for ourselves. I know we're getting to that. I get excited about this because
we are
these
getting
are the
into
things
it.
we don't know our rights. We
We
don't
don't
we
know.
don't. So yeah, let's keep talking. We're gonna keep on
I'm
going. This is
keep
great.
it moving, and I know I have 3 questions for you with the
I love it.
self-advocacy. So, what are I know there's a lot of barriers, and
Yeah.
what are the barriers you see in women face when it comes to speaking for themselves or speaking in general for their children? Because
Yeah.
like I said, I have my daughter,
Yeah.
and I want to teach her in reference to she's only
Mm.
7 at the moment, and before you know
Hmm.
it, she'll be 14. And so it's often not talk about the barriers of how not necessarily a provider would shut you down, but I
Hmm.
like I stated, how can we move past that in
Yeah.
general?
Yeah. So I think I already spoke to one of the barriers, and that's our programming, right? Our natural programming as women or as people in disenfranchised communities is that
Mhm,
in order for us to not get hurt, we have to stay quiet, right? There's this
mhm,
idea that is planted in us from a very early age not to rock the boat, to be quiet, not to create potential conflict
mhm,
because conflict is scary, right? If we grow up in conflict ridden homes, we don't want to get in conflict. And we're like, oh, if we question what the doctor is saying, that's going to create conflict. And so our own personal, challenges. So the personal challenges with raising questions or potentially questioning authority,
mhm,
those are some big barriers, but also the kind of cultural programming we have. But
mhm.
there's the idea that the doctor knows best.
And sometimes the doctor don't always know best.
Yes, that's the great thing of what we're
They
talking about here
they
is
don't
like
always know what's best.
they don't know what's best for you because you are the one that's living your life, not
Mhm,
them. Now, they are highly educated, they have
yeah,
experience, right? There are things that they know but at the same time, I feel like this is another cultural thing that I see is that we have lost our confidence in our own instincts and knowing what's right for
mhm,
us, right? We have
mhm.
outsourced our power for generations now that we've actually forgotten what it's like to listen to our intuition, to listen to our gut. And so oftentimes we default those decisions to other people because that's kind of how we've been raised in
Right.
healthcare, in religion, in education, right? And I mean, in parents, I mean, everything. And so the thing is that that barrier comes in is that we've actually lost that disconnect. Like we've disconnected from our own knowing, and
Mhm.
that becomes a barrier for us speaking up.
Which is very unfortunate,
It is.
to deal with that. Sometimes, people can be a little dismissive and trying to get over that barrier of, "Hey, you're gonna die," or,
Mm-hmm.
it's very shadowing. It's kinda like in that word needs to be shadow banned from the
Yeah.
dictionary, you
Whew.
know?
Yeah. I think that when we do, and that was kind of my third point, is the negative past experiences that we've had. those paint a picture of what it's going to be like in the future. And so
Mhm.
we tend to, hey, last time I spoke up for myself, this is what happened. And I don't want to experience that again. So I'm not going to speak up this time.
Mhm.
And oftentimes, as moms, right, that turns up to be maybe not speaking up in relation to our kids because we had negative things that happened to us when we were pregnant or,
Mhm.
before we had kids. And so overcoming these barriers, like I believe there's things we can do in every single one of these barriers to help improve our health outcomes. And the moment that we again reclaim our power, start becoming more advocates and clearing through some of these personal barriers that honestly affect us in every other area of our life, not just
Mhm.
our health, the moment that we start reclaiming the life that we want to live.
Yeah, I agree because, like, even when those barriers are being met, we can still find ways on how to begin educating ourselves about our body and being confident to ask these questions. So, how can we become more confidently in asking the questions to self advocate? What are the questions to ask for self
Hmm.
advocacy? Because there's some women that are probably right now are dealing with a lot of health issues and they've been shut down by their providers, but they want to go to a second, get a second opinion, or they want to
Hmm.
get a third opinion. But when they go, they get so timid. And so, what's the word besides timid? Guarded to
Yeah,
themselves.
hesitant, or they just yeah,
They
are scared
can't,
to speak up.
yeah,
Yeah.
they can't even, they're afraid to speak up. So, what
Yeah.
are the questions to ask for self advocacy?
Well, I think before we even get to the room where we're in, right, there's
Hmm.
things that we can do beforehand. Like, let's say that this woman, right, she's had some experiences, she's having some hormonal issues, or she's experiencing, like, you were experiencing miscarriages, or I was experiencing infertility because of PCOS, right? So these issues that come up that are woman issues
Right.
that we're going to the doctor for, because that's women of our age, that's what we're going to the doctor for. Unless you're in a car accident or something, that's what you're going to the doctor for, is
True.
lady things, right? Period issues or hormonal issues. So before you even step foot into that office, there are some things that you could do to help yourself feel more confident, to feel empowered, and to help that again shift that power dynamic so you become a team rather
Hmm.
than someone who's above and someone who's below. Now you're working on a more level playing field. So the first thing I always recommend is that women start educating yourself about your body. Like this, I literally have it on my desk, guys. This book right here, The Fifth Vital Sign by Lisa Hendrickson Jack, who is, by the way, an incredible woman. She's a fertility method educator,
Hmm.
a powerful, strong Black woman in the voice in this space. So read this book. This book will change your life about understanding what your body is doing and understanding that how your hormones are playing a part in your life, and that your periods they're not just random, they're actually a window into your health. They are your fifth vital sign. We talk about vital signs, right? I'm a nurse.
Yeah.
So when you go to the doctor, right, your nurse is going to take your vital signs. They're going to take your temperature. They're going to take your blood pressure. They're going to, check your heart
Right.
rate, right? All those things. Well, your periods and the health of your hormones is
Mhm.
your fifth vital sign. And when you start to know what is normal for you and what is not normal, and you start to
Mhm.
to understand those things, now you have a leg to stand on. You're not just like saying, "Oh, something's wrong. I don't know what," and then you go into the doctor's
Really
office.
peak Can't really peak what it is
Right.
until, like, something severity
Yeah,
does.
until something's like, like I'm bleeding cupfuls and I'm bleeding for 12 days out of the month. Like, right? Those are clearly, but there's things that happen before that. And so the more you educate yourself about that, there's many other books, and maybe we can put them in the show notes of some recommendations. But
Yeah.
just even doing that self education is a big piece. The second thing that you could do to get more confidence before you go in is to write your questions down. This is such an easy one. Take
Mhm.
a notebook
Or
and write
use your
down.
notes in your
Yeah,
phone.
girl, I'm a paper girl. So I got my journals on journals on
I
journals.
be Look, I be
Right?
doing them voice notes. I'm like, "Hello, this is Erica at 9:45 AM on October 29th. I am
Oh, yes.
here. And then they be looking at me like, why are you taking voice? I'm like, it's so much easier for
It's
me than,
right.
but
It's
whatever
like
floats anybody's boat.
I I love that so much. It's like whatever works for you, right? I'm an old school paper girl. I just love putting ink to paper. And so, but writing down those questions. So whether they're in your phone or voice notes or whatever is like, okay, what is it that you're observing? Write it down. And then what questions you have. And then if you're combining that with some of that education, you can now bring the questions instead of telling the doctor what, like, this is what's happening, right? We're not coming in there. We don't want to put the
Yeah,
defenses
not the
up.
pressure. Yeah.
But it's like, hey, I have been observing these things. I've done a little research into this, and I know that sometimes these kind of things can indicate X, Y, and Z.
Hmm.
Can we get some labs? Can we look into this issue? Can we investigate? Right. And so
Hmm.
now you're asking questions that are opening up curiosity because let's face it, their doctors are busy, they're overbooked, there's not
Hmm.
enough of them out there, and especially in healthcare deserts where I live in a very rural area where I don't have a doctor for 30 miles. And
Oh,
so,
wow. Really?
yeah, yes. Yeah, we don't have a doctor within 30 minutes of us from where I live. If you have a heart attack, you better hope that you have a first responder in your house because you're not going to be in an ambulance for at least
You
45
have
minutes.
me shocked right now. You said
Yeah,
30?
yeah. No, I mean, and this is for real. And this occurs not just in rural areas, but in urban
Mhm.
areas as well, where
No.
there's not enough providers for the amount of people that are there.
Mhm.
And so doctors are there for 5 minutes, right? They've got 5 minutes with you. And so being able to ask the right questions and to get the curiosity and asking about alternatives for treatments, or, just opening
And
up the
also,
conversation is
I
really
do
going
want
to
to
make a
add
big difference.
to
Yeah.
that. When the moment you do get into that office visit, for example, for people,
Yeah.
start checking your statements.
Yeah.
Start checking your statements, start checking your bills
Ooh.
because there's a lot of things that are very hidden where you don't know what a facility charge is versus a professional charge.
Mhm.
And the moment you get, let's say, for instance, you go to a hospital and the provider is works inside the hospital or their office is inside their hospital, you get a facility charge versus a professional charge, but you only went to that office visit thinking that, hey, this office visit was for 15 minutes. Why am I getting A, B, and C of these three charges? So that's another thing with self advocacy is checking your statements
That's a
as well.
huge point. Yeah.
That it's huge.
Especially with the complexity of medical billing, which honestly, I'm a healthcare provider and it is still very messy, right? I'm like, look at it and I'm like, So, yeah, but again, like educating yourself about your medical records. You have rights to your medical records, by the
Mhm.
way, if you didn't know that. Like,
You
you,
do.
yeah, in that,
And
and most,
each state is different,
yeah.
with their right their laws and their standards and their
Hmm.
procedures. So that's why I'm so glad that we're talking about the health advocacy space and how it can grow and how it can change and how it can be because right now we're dealing with AI, and AI
Hmm.
is coming into very much of the healthcare space and it's coming faster than what people think. And
Hmm.
so if you're not really computer savvy, and no offense to people that are not computer savvy, because I am computer savvy, but if you're not computer savvy and you don't understand why AI is happening into the healthcare space so quickly and why the healthcare is changing so rapidly, before 2028, you may want to start looking and reading because it's it's changing. These robots are coming in and they're taking these jobs. I just read something yesterday, for example, where Amazon has now, for their Prime members, they are building their own healthcare for their Prime members now, and it's like I think $9 or something, and you can go now to as a Prime member with Amazon, go to CVS, I think United Healthcare Group, and something I just saw it yesterday after send it to you. But
Yeah.
now they're starting that whole advocacy for their healthcare. And I was like, "What? Amazon has a pharmacy?" I mean, like I knew a little bit about Amazon, a little bit, but on the provider side of things. But I was like, "Oh, wow, they have their own pharmacy." And now that it's coming into fruition with their business, it's really really interesting.
Hmm.
Um, and so I love this conversation, by the way. So, for women of color in particularly, I know in the healthcare, I've experienced for myself the racial bias, and it's real and it's really painful.
Yeah.
What would you say to women who feel that they are being dismissed and not taken seriously by their health provider?
I really thought about this question before I came on here because I feel like as a coach and as a woman who is frequently having these conversations with women, um, I am in a position where women tell me like, "Hey, I went to this doctor and this is what happened," and in very real time. And if I was sitting there in the moment with a woman who was just experiencing that, I honestly, me personally, I would sit here and listen because here's the thing, like, yes, I'm a woman and I am a member of a community that often has had racial disparities, but the fact of the matter is I'm a white woman and I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know what it's like that what you're going through because it's a very different experience. I have a different life lived experience than this other woman does, and at the same time, I can sit here and I can always give encouragement and help
Mhm.
create a plan and help her, like, bolster her, whether it's her confidence or or self-assurance or does she need another resource or whatever. I can provide that as both a healthcare provider, as a coach, as or just another woman who is like, you know
Yeah.
what, I've been through some shit too, and you are so it's like I want to tell every single woman this is that you are so much more powerful than you know. You are
Mhm.
so much more
It's
powerful
very
than you
true.
know. And the fact of the matter is that as a woman of color, you might have to go through more doctors. You might you're I mean the you might have to, tap into more resources. You might need to educate yourself or speak up for yourself more just because of the way things are set up. And I
Yeah.
and but what I know about human beings is that when life is gives you these challenges, you get to really see who you really are. You get to see your own brilliance. You get to see your own resilience and strength. And honestly, that is what this world needs so desperately right now is for us to see who we are and then act from that place. And so I see, women who are facing these disparities, who are facing these challenges as incredible, beautiful, and intelligent women who have faced incredible challenges in their
Mhm.
health. And I would do everything I can to mirror that for her, and even just by coming on here on this podcast is a part of something that I can do. I can't
Mhm.
change everything, but I can at least help this conversation and help a woman know that she has options, and that the more that she learns about her body, learns about how to speak up for herself, then the more that she can do for her own health and for the health of her children.
And I love that you're reminding us that being an advocate isn't confrontational,
Yeah.
and that it's about really taking the ownership back to yourself and refusing to shrink less than what our society has built and created. So I love that you've empowered that perspective. Now, I am interested in this next conversation that we're having because I know we dive deep into health advocacy, but I want to talk about another topic that doesn't get enough open conversations, and that's birth control. Birth control and how it impacts our hormones, our emotions, and even our productivity. In my instance, like I stated, I've taken the pill and I did get pregnant on the pill, which
Uh-huh.
was a prescribed hormone, um, birth control early on, without truly understanding what that pill could have done to my body. So, can you inform about consent when it comes to the hormones of birth control? And why is it so important for women to understand both the benefits and the risk of birth control?
This idea of informed consent, gosh, it just plays so much into what we're talking about right now.
Mhm.
And this is honestly, the responsibility of informed consent is on the healthcare provider.
Mhm.
And they don't they don't fully always tell you everything that you actually need to know before they give you a medication. And especially so birth control, epidurals. I mean, I could go on, but we're talking about birth control right now. So also we'll stick
Okay.
to that topic. But
We can
you
go
know,
into epidurals, I got
but
two.
because
I
they're the
got
same,
two, okay?
they're the same here. Is like sometimes healthcare providers have their reasons for prescribing a medication, right?
Mhm,
And they really, when it comes to hormonal issues or contraceptive, right? Birth control is really the only tool that they have in their toolbox. So if you come to them with a problem,
mhm,
like, say you're having irregular cycles, right? And you come
mhm.
to them with that and they say, okay, we'll put you on birth control to regulate your cycles. That's the only tool that they know. But I have to say that that is, I mean, this is a little bit of a tangent here, but that's completely false because you're not even regulating your periods in the first place. You're not okay. I'm gonna do a little education piece here before, and then I'm gonna get into
Okay.
the big part of informed consent here. So hormonal birth control, when you are on the pill or the patch or the IUD
Mhm.
or the implant on or whatever, you are not having a period. It's not a period. Periods only happen, menstrual phases, you shedding your
Mhm.
lining only happens after you ovulate. And while you're on most HBCs, hormonal birth controls, you're not ovulating, right? That's the whole mechanism. They shut down
The
your
whole
ovaries so
method.
you don't get
That's the
pregnant, right? That's the whole
right.
mechanism of that medication. They're giving you synthetic hormones so that way your ovaries no longer work. Okay.
Okay.
So essentially, they're shutting down a normal process of your body and you stop making your own sex hormones. You're not making estrogen and progesterone anymore. So that's just that right there. So, what you are having on a pill is not a
Mhm.
period. It's called a withdrawal bleed. It's not a period. So, you're not actually regulating
So
anything.
it's not a cycle?
No, no.
Huh?
Do you know actually where this started? Oh, I'm gonna give you a little history
No.
lesson about birth control, sister. Okay.
Okay.
So when they invented hormonal birth control back in the 60s, right?
Mhm.
They were just giving women these synthetic estrogens and progesterones, and they were just pills, like they were continuously on it. Like if you skipped your placebo, right? If you have a pill
Okay.
pack and you skip your
Mhm.
placebo and you keep taking them, right? You don't have a period. Well, what was happening is these women who were taking it during the trials were like calling the doctors and be like, we're pregnant because they weren't having periods. And they kept having to
Whoa.
tell them, no, you're not pregnant. It's just working. It's fine. You're fine. So this was a psychological thing that they did is they put a placebo, a sugar pill, inside these pill packs, made it 28 days to mimic a natural cycle. So that way these women would stop thinking they were pregnant. And so they would keep taking the medication. It could have been
Um,
arbitrary. They could have picked 60 days, 90 days, 72 days. It didn't matter. But they
wow.
chose 28 days to make it seem like you were having a period. But it's not.
But
Periods
it's
only
not. So
no, it's here. It's
it's
just
here versus
yes.
here.
There's literally no reason if you're taking synthetic hormones that you have to have a bleed. The only reason why they do that is because somewhere deep inside, right? Because our bodies
Mhm.
know that periods mean we're not pregnant. It's a
And
psychological
so
thing.
with the hormone birth control, it can reject because your body can actually reject itself from saying that this hormone is not, you need more of this hormone versus like the estrogen versus the progesterone.
So, I mean, there's so many things that come to that, especially when it comes to the levels of synthetic hormones that you're taking
Mhm.
and what your body can override it. That's kind of what you're saying here, and that's how
Yeah.
things get how women on hormonal birth control can get pregnant. There's things because it's a natural biological process of your body for your body to make estrogen and progesterone with your ovaries. That's her normal.
Yeah.
She's supposed to do that. And so your body is always trying to achieve balance and she knows that if she's making her hormones that she's protecting your heart. She
Mhm.
is regulating your moods. There's so many effects that sex hormones play on your body, not just for reproduction. It's your entire body is affected.
So
Every
I
single I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, no, you're good because I have a question. This is the curiosity of a cat for me that I want to
Please.
understand. So if let's say for example you had a cycle, right? And you went from having no symptoms, none of the cycle symptoms, right?
Mhm,
1 month. And then all of a sudden the next month you're throwing up, you're moody, like it's just day and night. It
mhm,
comes.
mhm.
What is that exactly? Is that
So
like going into menopause? Because I
I
need to know.
I
But I
hear
mean,
you. So, let me
ask
just
it
make
for a
sure
friend.
I'm capturing the question. So this is not on birth control. This is just a regular cycle, right?
This
Correct?
is a
Like
this is a
regular cycle.
regular
Perfect.
cycle.
Wonderful. So if you are a woman who is not on hormonal birth control and you have normal, right? Normal periods that are not painful, they're not heavy, every 28 or 29 or 30 days, they're very regular. And then all of a sudden, you start seeing symptoms. Maybe you start seeing clots. Maybe your periods start getting wonky. Maybe PMS gets really uh, right up.
Right? Okay.
Think about these things as indicators on your car, right? When you're driving your
Mhm,
car, right? You're driving your car,
mhm,
you're going down this road trip, right?
mhm. Yeah.
And and everything's great. Everything's gravy. And then all of a sudden a light pops on.
Mhm, mhm.
Right? My windshield washer fluid that light came on this morning, right? It's telling
Right.
me that my car is out of washer fluid. And now all of a sudden, if my gas light came on, right, it would tell me that my car is out of gas. If
Right.
my check engine light comes on, there's
It's
something wrong
telling
with,
you that you're with it.
right?
Right,
These
right.
symptoms that you're talking about, these are the indicators on your body to tell you something's wrong. That's what they are. That's all they are. They're asking for you to pay attention to what's happening inside your body. And if you're driving along and you either ignore them or you take hormonal birth control, do you know what's happening? Hormonal birth control is basically like you taking a piece of paper and covering up
You're
your lights.
covering
You're
you're
covering them up.
masking
You're
what's
not
the problem.
fixing
Okay.
anything. You're just covering. I say it's like putting a band-aid on a bullet hole. But in this analogy here, it's like taking a piece of paper and saying, oh, we're just going to ignore these because now
Okay.
you've shut down the mechanism of your car to be able to tell you, your body to tell you that something is wrong, which is your periods, right? Like I said, it's your
Mhm.
fifth vital sign. It's telling you that something's
Telling
wrong.
you something is wrong. Okay.
Exactly. And so now it's just covering it up. It's not fixing anything, right? We're not checking the engine. We're not putting gas in the car. We're not putting windshield wiper fluid in the car. We're not fixing anything. We're just
Interesting.
silencing the alarms. We're turning the alarms off. And then, so what happens, like what happened with me, this is what happened with me from a
Mhm,
personal story here, right? I was, as a teenager, I was experiencing irregular cycles, even beyond
mhm.
just the first couple of years, which is very normal to have irregular
Right.
cycles as your body is coming online. But I was still having irregular cycles. I was having extreme cystic acne. I was having issues with body hair. There was things that were happening that we didn't know at the time were issues. And
Mhm.
so when I joined the military's like, oh, you got irregular periods and acne? We got something to fix for that. Hormonal birth control. So I was 19 years old and I went on birth control. Nobody investigated those things. They just put me on birth control because that was the tool that they had. And so
Mhm.
then 10 years goes by. And now I met a nice man. We want to have a baby. So I come off of
Mhm.
birth control and I don't have a period for 6 months. And everything came roaring back. All the acne, all the body hair, all of the
Did you
problems.
did
I
you
gained 30 pounds. We have no
did you say
idea what
6
happened.
months?
Huh?
You said 6 months?
6 months. And so, yeah. So I went to my doctor and I told him, and she's like, well, we need to investigate that. So I was now diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome at that point. I had to get medications to get pregnant. And the thing is that I had been experiencing PCOS. I had symptoms of it when I was
But didn't
17,
but
18, 19,
didn't
but
but didn't
nobody,
know, but
but we,
nobody told you.
right. And so then the hormonal birth control just covered it up for that entire decade. And so here's what happened, Erica, which I can't, I do not regret it in my own life because this is my
Mhm,
story. And this is what led me to becoming a women's hormone coach, why I left the hospital and is taking my degree and am helping women to prevent these
mhm,
things because I spent an entire decade of my 20s battling with something, with a condition that I didn't even know how to take care of myself for. And it took another decade on top of that for me to actually figure out how to care for myself. The doctors didn't tell me how to do that. I had to do that. And so I learned that PCOS is not just a reproductive condition, it is a metabolic condition. That means that I have a greatly increased chance of getting type 2 diabetes and a stroke and cancer and all the metabolic conditions that are obesity. I mean, all of these things. And I didn't even know that. And it's
And
not,
what's interesting with your story is the fact that I'm sure these providers saw this and just was like, "Oh, I got to get out of here. We're going to fix it and we're going to move on." It, what's crazy to me is with PCOS, because a lot of people don't know what PCOS is,
yeah.
and I have a dear friend um, that had battled with PCOS. Later on, she has a 1-year-old, 2-year-old daughter,
Hmm.
and she had got told the same thing, like the whole, just cover up with the Band-Aid situation.
Yeah.
And she was like, I never think I was going to she's like, I never thought I was going to have a kid, ever. And for me, for the longest with me, before Ariana came into my life, I didn't think I was going to have kids, until one day I'm sitting up here sick as a dog and I'm like, I'm just sick. It's a cold. It's nothing, and I miss work, for
Yeah.
it. And to come to find out, I was like, whoa, I'm pregnant. Like, I mean, you got to do actions to get pregnant, right?
Right.
Wink, wink. But
Right.
then again, I'm like,
Yeah.
and then you got to do the phone call. And I did the phone call. And of course, the dad didn't believe that I was pregnant. And I was like, I am pregnant. Who else am I, wink,
Yep.
wink around here?
Right.
But mind you, he's on a 17 feet in the air getting this
Mm.
information. So he's like, okay, I need you to go to the hospital. Go to the hospital. And they're like, congratulations, you're in your first trimester, And so I feel like how our hormones are happening and, elevate, they decrease. Like I said, it's often overlooked and dismissed. And I love that you're sharing your story with me and,
Yeah.
sharing it with other people, because I know there are some alternatives that you can explore besides the hormone
Yeah.
um, birth control. One, is it more going through a natural approach with those hormones? And then also, do birth control influence our moods and our energy? Um,
Hmm.
because
There's so
I
much there. Yeah.
went birth control, my energy, like I was tired. I was just like,
Hmm.
oh, tired.
Yep.
I didn't understand why I was tired. So I would love for you to answer those.
Yeah. So along with informed consent, because that's really what was the question, and then we got kind of on a tangent, but I love this, is
No,
like,
no, no.
is
Good.
understanding the risk versus benefits of a medication. That's really what this is
Mhm.
about. And so often we don't know the very common side effects that come with birth control. So I always encourage people to do this. Like, if you are on a hormonal birth control, go to that birth control's website and
Mhm.
actually read the risks and side effects of the medication. Just read it. It's pages. I mean, we get those little pamphlets, right? Right? If you get a pill pack, you get those little pamphlets, and everybody's just like, "Oh, I'm just going to throw it away." Well, actually, there's really important information in there, and that's why the doctors don't always go into that, because they're like, "Oh, it's in the pamphlet. They'll read it if they want to know." But here's the
Mhm.
problem: is that there are some pretty significant side effects and changes that women experience while they're on birth control that get glossed over. And so it's painted this picture, right, that we've created in our society about birth control being very innocuous, meaning that it's like not very, like, it's no big deal, right? They hardly even consider it a medication these
I
days.
feel like it, like I said, at one point, I feel like it's so overlooked, because I've had providers even do me where they're like, okay, we're going to do another testing. We're going to do another testing. I'm like, but what is with all these tests for? Like, there, for some reason, there's a problem, but you're not explaining why
Right.
the test is happening.
Explaining. Yeah.
And another thing that I think is not often talked about is with birth control, before even getting any type of birth control, I think they need to push a little bit more of having a hormone panel, because that's
Uh,
not either.
oh girl, oh girl, I could go
That's not
on and
even
on
happening
about
either.
that. Standard of practice for before prescribing, especially if you're coming in with hormone problems, right? If you're coming in
Mhm.
for using hormonal birth control for contraceptive, right? And that's it. Actually, I mean, hormone birth control is very effective in contraception. Like, that's what it's for. But what's happened is we are now using it as the band-aid for every hormonal. We're just like, okay, this is the only tool that they have to, and it's not their fault, right? It's just this is what they're taught. It's like, oh, a woman comes in with these problems, you give her a birth control. That's it. That's just what, but it's
Yeah.
essentially like them trying to fix the plumbing, mow the lawn, build a chicken coop, all with a screwdriver. Right? They have one tool. And so we're trying to build a whole homestead here, and all we got is a screwdriver, right? It's not going to work. I have a chicken coop, so I was just
I like
watching
the
my
chicken
partner
soup
build a chicken coop. Yeah, I love it. But that's what's happening. So let's talk a little bit. You asked about these side effects, and let's talk a little bit about that.
Mhm.
So one of the things you said, you had mentioned was your energy levels. This is one of
Mhm.
the first biggest things that women recognize when they're on hormone, and almost immediately. It's almost so quick. Like if you're one of the women who experiences fatigue, it's
Mhm.
happened so quick, like even within like a day or so. It's very,
Mhm.
very quick. Um, so, I mean, again, think about, what we were saying before is like you are essentially shutting down your body's natural production of estrogen and progesterone. You're shutting it down. And those things affect your moods, your libido, your ability to focus, your creativity, your ability to regulate your emotions, even how your brain talks to each other. There is a book. There's a book. We're going to put this on here in the show notes. Please, because this is really good. There's a
Okay.
book called
I'm with it.
Your Brain on Birth Control by Sarah E.
Cool.
Hill. Your Brain
That's
on Birth
interesting.
Control. This woman, she's not a healthcare professional. She was a journalist. And she actually set out to write a very different book. She wanted to prove that birth control, because she is a feminist. She is all for women's empowerment, and that the hormonal
Like,
birth control revolutionized how
mhm.
women could show up in the world, which it did. And there was a price. But she set out to write a book about like proving that hormonal birth control is like amazing. And then as she started looking into it, she's like, oh shit, this is
And it's
not,
not.
this is
It's not.
actually
It's
not
the
really
opposite.
good.
It's
So
the
she wrote a very
opposite.
different book. And so it's called Your Brain on Birth Control. Highly recommend it. If you want to be educated about how birth control is affecting you and how you show up in your
Mhm.
business and your life, read that book because it will open your eyes to so many things.
I I feel like with the knowledge that I have so far with
Yeah.
birth control a little bit, it's almost like it's all of these topics that we're talking today is not to scare anybody because it's
No.
just to have an open conversation because
Yeah.
it's not often talked about. It's not even men's health is not even men's mental health is not talked about, but
Yeah.
another tangent for
It's
another day.
Yeah, it is. Well, the mental health aspect too. That's a huge other thing is the depression and anxiety that comes oftentimes on birth control. And it's what ends up happening is women experience like new depression or new anxiety, and
Mhm.
or they've experienced it for years and there's never any connection. They never think, "Oh, is it my birth control?"
They don't,
But
yeah, because it's not
because we don't
it's
talk about.
something it's in our routine that we're supposed
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
take if you have it, or if
eh,
you have the shot, to take the shot, and I've heard the
Right.
shot has now kinda, like, decreased everything, and it's messing up more of people's ovaries, so
Mm,
that's one of the reasons why I haven't really gone on that route,
yeah.
but I prefer, um I just think for me, it would be easier to do a pill versus,
Yeah.
going in the insides and, cutting up and, it's a scary time, but it's also
It's
rewarding for having the conversation.
right. And these are the things, the kinds of conversations, because here's the thing about consent is that every woman is going to make a different choice of what's right for her.
Mhm.
There are women who will hear all the things that I'm saying and saying, yep, I'm still going to take hormonal birth control. And that's
Mhm.
great. I love
That's
that
fine.
for you. But what I want to make sure is that she knows, because if she knew, would she make a different choice? I made a different choice when I found out. I started making a different choice because I started listening and educating myself a little bit. And for me, the risks that were coming with birth control, particularly the
Mhm.
mental health risks and the covering up of my condition, right? Those things told me that I actually needed to find a different way. I needed to find a different way because it was also affecting me, my sexual health. Like the
Mhm.
sexual side effects are not talked about enough. I
No.
mean,
Mm.
I mean, the decrease in testosterone, which means you have less libido. Um, and get this, even shrinkage of your clitoris is is a side effect. And I guarantee you
Hmm.
that if there was a pill that we were giving men that they knew that it was shrinking their penis, and by 30%, by the way, in some research studies is showing clitoral shrinkage up to 30% with hormonal birth control use.
Wow, I
That
didn't know.
yes, girl. And so if that was happening, I guarantee you we would be having a different conversation about hormonal birth control. But but that's my point here, is that if these things, you have particular values, you have things that are important to you, and informed consent about this medication means that you are understanding that these are the risks, reading books like this, where she has an entire chapter where she talks about birth control. There's another book called Beyond the Pill by Dr. Jolene Brighton. She literally talks about all of the risks and your options outside of that, alternatives for that, for hormonal birth control. The other book I just mentioned, Your Brain on Birth Control by Sarah E. Hill. Like these things, this is how
This is
you
how to educate yourself.
educate yourself. Yes. And so that way, again, these people that are writing these books, they are not anti birth control. I am not anti birth control. I am pro informed consent. And we're not getting the whole story as women. We're not getting told, it's getting glossed over. And quite frankly, I'm done with that. I am done
Yeah.
just getting glossed over. Like,
I'd rather it be a topic where it's actually talked about in doctor's offices versus
yeah,
where it's like kind of like a Band-Aid being glossed over and just, okay, well, you can come back and you pay another high doctor bill when you don't need, you could solve it
hmm
a lot
yeah,
sooner and a lot quicker.
yeah, yeah,
And so now that we have talked about birth control and self-advocacy, and we've dived in a little bit about hormones themselves, because this is where so many moms start to see a real shift on how they feel day to day.
yeah,
Um, and I know I talked about a little bit about how our hormones constantly fluctuates. It goes high one minute, it goes low the next, where they're like completely out of whack. And we can feel it. For me, I feel like the most that my hormones go out of whack is when my cycle starts. Is when these last couple cycles, my hormones have been like, I'm crying one minute, the next minute I'm throwing up. And I'm
hmm
like, it's like I said, it's a day and night. So
hmm
can you break down how our hormones impact our focus, our energy, our effectiveness, both at work and at home?
absolutely. So, I like to think about women's bodies as direct reflections of the earth. Right. I'm a very earth based type of belief system. And so the seasons, right? I live in central Indiana, so I have a very temperate seasons. I have beautiful fall colors outside right now, and it's chilly, right? But
Mhm,
as we think of the seasons as like winter is cold and snowy, spring things are coming to life, summer it's hot and sunny, and then fall time leaves are falling and it's getting cooler again. Well,
mhm,
our bodies and our hormones have natural fluctuations just like the seasons. But just like the difference between me living in Indiana and how I experience the season and you living in Texas experiences the seasons are very different, right?
mhm. Yeah,
Our
yeah.
bodies are the same way. Even though we might have similarities, our unique experiences of our hormones can be very different from person to person, and it affects your hormones don't just affect your fertility. It's not just reproduction. You literally have receptors, estrogen receptors in every single cell of your body. That means that estrogen is impacting everything, your brain, your digestive
Mhm,
system, your muscles, your skeletal system, your immunity, your I mean everything. And
mhm,
so your sex hormones that are produced by your ovaries are impact your moods, your focus, your energy, libido, your emotional regulation, your creativity, how your life satisfaction and fulfillment. All of these things are affected by how your body fluctuates, and it's going to change. Naturally, it's meant to, right? We're not
mhm.
meant to
Yeah.
be in 72 degrees and sunny all the time. That's not how our bodies are designed. There's natural ebbs and flows. And when you start to understand those natural ebbs and flows, now you can start to distinguish between when is the right time for me to be very social with people. When is the right time for me to stop and rest? When is the right time for me to be more creative? You start to
Mhm.
know that for yourself. Just like you would be like, when's the right time for me to have a pool party?
Yeah.
In July when it's hot
July.
out,
Yeah.
right? Rather
Well,
than December when it's cold out. Like,
you know what's interesting with hormones
yeah,
is that we've covered about PCOS, we've
yeah,
covered about periods and birth control,
yeah.
but our hormones are starting to affect, and I don't know if I offend anybody, and I hope I don't, but it also starts entering into. I've been seeing a lot of things about menopause. You know that your
Yeah,
can start as early as in your 30s
yeah,
versus in your 40s, and you've always hear often like, okay, it's supposed to happen in your 40s. This is what you're supposed to look forward to in your 40s. And I'm like, I'm halfway there.
yeah,
Okay. I'm in the
yeah,
middle, my mid 30s. And so I want to touch a little bit about menopause a little bit.
yeah,
Um, with the three questions that I have, like, what are the most common signs that women's
yeah.
hormones may be out of balance, you know?
I love this because this is who I work with. These women, what you're speaking to right here is the woman who's like 35 years old and starting to see things like our issue, or she's, approaching 40 and people are telling her, "Oh, like perimenopause doesn't happen until you're in your
Mhm.
mid 40s or late 40s," because that's what we're being told. But here's the thing. We're starting to see women fully into perimenopause, which perimenopause is the about the decade leading up to menopause, which is the moment you stop, that you haven't bled for a year. That's considered menopause, and it's
I'm
literally
not
only just one
ready.
day.
I'm not
So
ready.
yeah, but it could be 10 or even 15 years of that transition.
Mhm.
That transition, your body is transitioning from relying on your sex hormones from your ovaries, and it's moving over to your hormones being produced by your adrenal glands so it's a transition, a whole
Mhm.
transition point, and that can start as early as 35. And the reason for that is because we live very stressful lives, because we
Mhm.
have a shit food system. I mean, pardon my French, but we are eating, it's not even food at this point. We're living sedentary lives that are not very stimulating from a creative context, right? We're just like consuming all the time.
Consuming, yeah.
uh,
Mhm.
right? And so this life that we've built, as magnificent as technology is, as magnificent of what we have built in our lives with capitalism and all of these things, right? There's so many great things about it, right?
Mhm.
But our bodies are revolting. And our bodies are the cost. It's the price of the life that we live. So these are the things that are the most common signs that women's hormones, that your hormones might need some attention, right? These are the check engine
Mhm.
lights, right?
Check
So
engine
the
lights, like you
yeah,
were saying
yeah,
earlier.
the check engine. These are your check engine lights, okay? So irregular periods, heavy periods, like any change in flow, painful periods, like meaning you're, oh gosh, if there was anything I could tell every woman is your periods are not meant to hurt. And if they hurt, there's something wrong. Okay. Like there's like mild, just like aches, like that's expected, a heaviness. But if it hurts, there's something wrong. That's a check engine light.
Mhm.
Weight gain, especially around the belly, right?
Mhm.
Unexpected weight gain or stubborn weight around the belly, mood swings, PMS, fatigue. Um,
Could weight loss be another one
I
that's
def
happening?
It's definitely worth looking into. I mean, any changes in weight is always worth looking into. That's always a check
Okay.
engine light, especially if you're not intending. If you're not intending to lose weight and you suddenly notice you've lost 10 or 15 pounds, please go to the doctor. There's something that needs to
Mhm.
be investigated there, right? Same thing,
Mhm.
but typically when we're in perimenopause, it's going to be a weight gain because or a shift in weight, like weight distribution
Like
changes.
a fluctuation in your weight.
Yeah,
Okay.
or you're
Okay.
gonna start to see it around the belly. That's a very,
Mhm.
very common side effect, of imbalanced hormones. Other
Okay.
things are like ADHD or neurodivergent challenges,
Mhm.
especially the week before your bleed. If those are getting exacerbated, that's also another sign that hormones might be out of whack. Um,
That's interesting that you say like all of these things. And it's like again, this is not to scare anybody. This is
no.
just an open conversation because um are there ways to restore your hormones? I've heard like natural and is it herbal?
Mhm,
Herbal remedies to rebalance the hormones.
mhm.
to kind of like shift the energy and the focus that I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Um, and
I
then
mhm,
one more question is
yep.
when it comes to getting support, what kind of health providers or testing options would you recommend women exploring if they feel like something is off?
Okay. So, as far as what you can do to care for your hormones, there right? Remember the context that hormonal birth control is just slapping a band-aid on the bowl. It's not taking care of
Mhm.
anything. So let's just kind of move that aside for a moment.
Okay.
Getting curious about what is impacting your hormones is the first step. It's like get curious. It's like what is actually happening? And so the first thing I recommend is that women start tracking. Track your whole cycle. I don't even it's sitting over there. I have this book. It's called Cycles Journal, right? And
Mhm.
it is produced by an independent printing company owned by Rachel Amber. She is an incredible author and has created a beautiful space for women and people who menstruate to understand more about their bodies. And
Mhm.
it's a paper journal, but there's so much more to it than that. But when I say this journal literally changed my life, it literally changed my life because I started to learn about my body and what my body was doing. So I had to
Oh, okay.
understand that first. So that way I could understand what was normal for me and what wasn't. Because if you
Okay.
don't know, you're not going to be able to, right? You're not going to be able to advocate for yourself. If you just kind of feel like maybe
You
something's
just
off,
don't know.
you don't
Yeah, 'cause
know
I have.
exactly what's happening. So tracking it, so you can use an app like the Clue app or the Flow app. Those are great, but you need to track
Mhm.
every day because you're going to be a different person every day. What
Mhm.
is normal for you and what is not is a very important piece of information.
Okay.
Second of all, there are lifestyle things that you can do to improve your hormones. It is, again, this is about power reclamation, becoming responsible for your health, becoming the
Mhm.
person who says, I'm not just going to give that power to somebody else outside of me. I'm going to take that power
Yeah.
back myself. And so, understanding how to care for your body, learning about
Mhm.
your body, and making the lifestyle changes that you need to do to support your hormones. This is what I mean, this is my job. This is what I do. Is I teach women how to live a life that supports their hormones so they live and have more energy, so they lose weight, so they feel better and they, because like essentially I have reversed my PCOS. I don't experience it anymore because and
Mhm.
even though they're like there's no cure, well, actually I just gave my body what she needed in order to operate at her best. And now I don't experience those hormonal problems anymore. I'm more fertile now in my 40s than I was in my 20s because I learned how to care for my body. So for
Mhm.
this woman here who's like I'm experiencing these challenges, you know, and what can she do? Well, there are lifestyle things that you can do to help improve that. Some things like
Mhm.
even just improving your sleep, cleaning up your diet, moving your body, like these very things that we know we should be doing,
That
but
we should be doing, yeah.
they
'Cause
really
I just started walking last week, so I'm gonna try to
but
get
that's
time for
fantastic.
summertime.
Walking is fantastic. It's a
Yeah.
start, right? And so it's not impossible, but it does take it takes responsibility. It takes us saying, "You know what? My health is my responsibility, and I've
Mhm.
gotta do things to care for my body." And when you
Yeah.
start shifting that mindset instead of thinking, "I'm just gonna take a pill to fix it,"
Mhm.
first off, you're not fixing anything. You're not fixing anything. When you take a
Mhm.
pill, it's not fixing anything. It's just taking care of the symptoms. You're not actually taking care. So, to actually take care of yourself requires self-awareness, requires responsibility and taking that onto yourself and saying, my health is my responsibility, nobody else's. And I can have people on my team that will support me, like, having a coach. So that was, the resources you were talking about. So
Mhm. Mhm.
um, finding a provider that will listen to you, right?
Mhm.
I will say there are some providers that tend to be a little bit more holistic than others, like a
Mhm.
naturopathic doctor or an osteopath, a doctor of osteopath, or particular OBGYNs who have done further education and are looking at the whole body. Um,
Oh, okay. I
you
never knew
know,
that.
like
That's
holistic,
interesting.
right? Holistic, that's what holistic means. It means whole body.
Holistic
Like
whole body.
that's an entirely different conversation, but in something I truly believe in about the physical symptoms are not just physical, there are
Mhm.
emotional and spiritual effects and
Mhm.
getting people on your team to help you with that to understand that
Mhm.
you are not just a body, you are a body who thinks and feels and has a connection to
Yeah.
the world at large, whether however you believe, whatever your belief system is, whether you call it the divine or the quantum or whatever, right? There's just, we are all connected to something.
We are.
And so when you start approaching health from that way and getting
Mhm.
people on your healthcare team that supports that, that's when you start finding true health.
And I like how you said that. And especially, I like how we touched on earlier about taking responsibility for your own health and your
Mhm.
behaviors and the choices that are being made. Um, because this is such a good conversation. I'm like loving the conversation. Um, and we're almost wrapping up. But what I like how you said about taking responsibility of getting that power, reclaiming that back over to you is really important. I like that you said that. I don't wanna just say for boss moms in general, I wanna say for every woman in general, how can you take small and realistic steps towards, um, being more responsible, proactive with your own health? I know we touched a little bit about it earlier, and how to practice self-compassion along the way, especially when we feel overwhelmed or behind.
Uh, I feel like we have talked about so many of these pieces, like how can we take those steps, becoming an advocate, educating yourself, getting
Mhm,
curious about your body, because um that piece right there, I think that was piece that we haven't talked about, was about being curious about your body. And I have a very um I have a very kind of connected space with my body. I see my
mhm,
body as a teammate, even my soul's mate. It is this part of me that allows me to experience this life on earth. And
mhm.
the more that I see that relationship, the more that I see women change their minds about that and start shifting how they view their body as not just a thing. It's not just here and all this, and the only time we notice it is when it's broken or it doesn't look the way that we want it to,
Yeah,
right?
true.
But to actually see it as a part, a teammate of ours who is here to help us with whatever mission or purpose we have that we want to live out, right? Like if you're an entrepreneur and you're, wanting to, you're starting a business or you have a mission, if you're in a mission-based business like I am, like that is a calling for you. And your
Mhm.
body helps you get there. If you're a
Yeah.
mom, right? Like that's a part of your purpose. I mean, so many of us feel like having our children was a part of our calling and why we're here. Breaking
Mhm.
generational cycles of the ways that we speak to our kids or helping the next generation, like that is a part of our purpose. And if we don't have this relationship with our bodies, this
Mhm.
positive relationship with our bodies, then we can't show up in these callings that
You
we
show
have.
up in the
They are
spaces.
our
Mhm.
teammate. And so getting curious and helping to see that mindset shift, that maybe your body is more important than what you've given it credit for in the past. I know there was a long time that I had very negative feelings towards my body. And now I've repaired a lot of those things. And because I have, now I get to live my life full of purpose and joy and vibrancy. Right. And I'm not living that responsibility to someone else. That
Yeah,
responsibility now comes to
I
me.
love that.
So, the self-compassion, honestly, that piece really comes from seeing that you are a human being, not a human
Mhm.
doing, that there is going to be times when self-care is not going to be able to be prioritized, like when you things are going to fall to the wayside. But realizing that the more that you bring that to the center, the more that you realize that you've got to put your oxygen mask on first before helping others, the more that you will start to see that abundance of love and joy and energy start to overflow. And those feelings of overwhelm or feeling behind or all those things start to drift away. And it really just truly does come
Okay.
back to this like center of understanding that we are worthy of the care, that when we
Yeah.
prioritize our self-care, we feel better and can show up better in our lives. And we're able to be more compassionate for ourselves and for those that are around us.
And I do want to I do want to say and touch on when you said showing up because you want to show up not only for yourself, but for other people around you. You can't
Yeah.
show like the glass I've always talked about. When you have a glass and that water is overflowing that glass and it just keeps overflowing, it's because you're not able to show up for yourself, which means you can't show up for other people. So
Yeah.
I do like that you state that, um, which is an encouraging reminder. It's a very
Mhm.
small reminder, but it's very encouraging. And today's conversation has been such an empowering deep dive into how we can become informed, balanced, and confident within our bodies, which I love that. Um, as I do with all my guests when we're wrapping up, is if you can leave our listeners with one key takeaway about maybe a good affirmation, health self advocacy, and body awareness, what would it be?
Your body is extraordinary. And when you get to know her and take care of her, a whole entire new world of possibilities and energy and vibrancy unlock for you. It's like a whole nother level of a life that you didn't even know was available to you.
Mhm. I love that so much. Well, thank you, Corey, for sharing your insight and truth today. For those who want to connect with you, where can they find you online?
I love this. I'm a socials girl. I love you can find me on Facebook. I have a at Kori Rae Kovacs. I'm the only one. Just make sure you spell it, with a Kori. But
Mhm.
yeah, connecting with me on Facebook or Instagram at Kori Rae Kovacs. You'll find me there too. I have a beautiful Facebook group that is a free group for women who want to know how to balance their hormones and take care of themselves from a more aligned perspective. It's called Vibrant and Aligned, and we have fantastic conversations about how to care for your body in a cyclical way that honors your hormones and gives you the vitality and the energy that you need to fuel your life's purpose. And I would love to connect with you on there. So I'll make sure you have that link. But yeah, I would
Yes.
love to connect with you,
Yes.
or just
Yes.
shoot me a
Yes.
message. Just say, hey,
For
like, what
sure.
did you love? I would love to hear it because I know some of these things we talked about today is it's powerful. It's often something we don't talk about a whole lot. So if there was something that was really important to you, just reach out. I'd love to connect. I'd love to connect.
I love socials too. So,
Yeah.
to all the moms, entrepreneurs, just anyone that is advocating for women, whether you're a healthcare provider, whether you're a therapist, um, just women in general are awesome. But here I want to leave a reminder that you are your own advocate. And no matter what you do, whether you're in a therapist's office, a doctor's office, even in the hospital, please advocate for yourself, educate yourself, ask questions, and trust your instinct. Your health is pretty much your foundation, of your strength, your peace, and your success. So, I want to again thank you, Corey, for being on another heartfelt episode of the Balanced Boss Mom podcast. Until next time, everyone, stay balanced, stay bold, and remember to take care of yourself one day at a time. So, bye, guys.